Hello, dear China, dear America. Our countries are in a trap, and the people involved with it, they start fights between people because they can screen how a whole bunch of different countries are criminally influenced here and there because of a breaching method knew before our founders were even born. Everyone was going to blame other things, others themselves, where they knew we would have to counter as fact treatment nature things like criminal foreign influences, things like criminal insidiousness, not just negative for the obvious negative criminal insidiousness. Modern countries would have to counter semi-ancient, but criminal insidious natures of positive treatment simultaneously. So we have names making economic treatments. We know our founders left us to get to freedom, where we could show how the not just that the economics weren't fair, they were employed by a breaching method, criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions wrought, uses of the sense and sensibilities of people, also to screen the motivations of the breaching method, where and how nature is increasingly demonstrating that to us. But see, it effectively and blamed those, it forced, tricked, hurt, persuaded, and sustained roles, not even fathoming, blaming what nature was demonstrating about the breaching method, blame the other things, others, or ourselves. American doctors, including with the military at Hartford Hospital, for example, and hospitals throughout the state and throughout interstates, they have physical delusions. I'm not a doctor. They have physical delusions. They have nature delusions, and they have identity delusions. And they have criminally foreign influence uses of databases where they fabricate audio and video. There increasingly and increasingly at other locations. These are also names involved with our countries where you guys are supposed to share secrecy. A whole bunch of people tied to Demoros have and Korean families are recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed a whole bunch of wells with like with people with the name. Well, in other words, Mike Pandolf, though, is one of the ones at Central Connecticut State University involved with the intelligence community, with all sides in criminal and in civil cases, with victims and with victims advocates, and then again through time. And increasingly with people on my street named O'Brien, also involved with the other countries, criminally foreign influences. We have to counter how at little kids our roles timed with adults, but also with ones from off campuses that need things then that to keep out its foreign influences. And none of our country's representatives are caring about us. America's founders told us to address George Washington's extortion. They don't address George Washington's extortion because they also told us to address the torture of himself. And addressing that properly, it shows how he was a fact treatment nature slave, and they had to hide their roles countering the breaching method. That had a whole bunch of different colonies, more than the 13 first original states. And those colonies had been divided themselves, and they weren't all English colonies. See, they have the history summarized by people that are tactically delusions raw, criminally foreign influenced, self-value to other ages of campuses. Fake integrity there because fake is integrity there. Oh, but we sacrificed to get our degree. This has the science of self-value to bridge, and that measured and maintained where correlation nature. A little kid could speak American history better than adults. You have to use how the breaching method discernibly, sickly distinctly was against Native Americans, but also sickly non-distinctly, it was against everyone. But it employed our natural differences, black pupils, whites of eyes, exceptions in exception nature. We have the same eyes while simultaneously we have different color eyes. You see how people are always like, oh, which one is it, A or B? Boolean logic. Exception nature used criminally with programs increasingly at other locations. They can't afford to have discerned what since before computers used words like program and databases, that which was involved with the method that measured and maintained ourselves as slaves, the human volume science from abroad. and grouped suits and ties and the counters of them. So please, China, while America, while one nation, while one country is still in the suits and ties, with the breaching method left out of the equation, left out of the logic, there's a problem. Please, let's, you know, I'll show you. Like we could do a military exercise, unlike other ones, because this one makes means out of nowhere everywhere. And in other words, pantheism / hyperpantheism, which is not, this is science, because the other species bodies have two eyes too. There is a shared identity. There's the species body / S system that no one can make up. It is itself. It is not us, but it is anyway. It is not the other species, but it is anyway. It is showing us to communicate. It is showing us it's distinct, it's non-distinct, and its simultaneous relationship to itself / hyper simultaneous. So being an individual is being a simultaneous nature. While the value of humanity as a voicing is because the species body is a volume science that is distinct but also non-distinct. I mean, it's non-distinct, but it's also distinct and simultaneously, and group differences, male, females, ages, sexes. We see this with other species bodies. Even the birds have male, female. Species body, individual body of individual bodies. See, we have been other systems than this one that is hypernative pure. So it is also showing us the increasing value of the discernment of how the natural difference of indigenous populations and their fact treatment nature impositions with this. Two, from a tactically denatured base, since before our founders were born, the suburbs were designed to cause negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures. Along with, for all kinds of reasons, additional to, but with nature demonstrating the breaching method present. Even if everyone agreed to be a part of systems that entertain slavery, nature is going to demonstrate with negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures. See, this breaching method came from semi-ancient times, forced, tricked, hurt, and persuaded people not even realizing, made them self-value, defenses of themselves. That as fact treatment nature shouldn't have a victim / hyper victim need to blame other things other than themselves. Victim as right through ourselves out wherever we are, species by standing, and then hyper victim because the breaching method is to measure and maintain other things, others or selves blame for itself. And or that self who starts discerning it is sensed and hurt. That's why and how American history has pretended they believe George Washington owned slaves, and how they got away with saying, oh, what's your evidence? Our founders told us to communicate about how they had to counter extort the other founders. How they had, for example, in Wethersfield, Connecticut, right before the last battle of the Revolutionary War, America had to counter the roles North and South, sickly, distinctly South colonies, and entrenched with slavery. Countries individually grouped and together. Now, this was part of that breaching method that knew also everyone would want to come out of the crazy laws. At all locations, though, it was complete possession / hyper possession over everyone's syntax, and it was applications. It was identity, the value progression to hurt everyone, including with positive treatments. All positive treatments and negative treatments of collusion more and more against our names, because against identities, values / value progression system. As a trinity, because we're inside its complete one identity's volume. Just as each cell of our body, cell nucleus, cell body, cell walls manifest as three different invisible but still discernible, cell wall slash S, the states of itself, the shared identity the cell that the cell nuclear cell body cell wall has as an identity of volume is that, in other words, it also has the two identities of sequence slash simultaneous nature and reception of the gases, oxygen and carbon dioxide, and they're valued positive or negative to the complete identity. Nature answers our questions, what to do with everything, even when we make something up. And what's simultaneous, and with the water too. Water, five distinct identities of positive, five distinct identities of sequence slash simultaneous nature are positive simultaneously or not. As long as we're and when it's not, it demonstrates with negative value nature progressions action nature. Well, when it is, it demonstrates with positive value nature progressions action natures. It means out of nowhere. There's a shell game played against Americans and our people against each other in every different country, A through Z, are in this trap. This is where our names were assigned to mean what they don't mean, to mean other than that which are hypernative pure. So we're not supposed to put words in the name of Mao Zedong, but we know already countries to defend themselves as factory in nature, they were groupings, tactical ulterior from how we are grouped. Supposed to speak about group difference. For example, individual grouped differences and species body difference. While we have the same color eyes and different color eyes. And everything, how to explain this, nature is showing us. Nature is a word for identity, because same way we need different words for the identity of a verb. As a predicate, it's as a main verb. As a participle nature, it is a present or past participle. The value, they're coupled because they're relative to two distinct identities of invisible but still discernible, invisible slash hyper invisible but still discernible. Its identity of volume, as volume, its identity of relationship to itself also as volume, where volume equals value as nature slash nature as value. And also the value of that are only increasing in where before physical matter was generated. His proofs is most practical and demonstrable. But in other words, how we could see that hyper invisible but still discernible becomes easier when, in other words, and that's one state of itself where it's not juxtaposed with matter. And then where it is juxtaposed with matter, it's another identity of relationship to itself. But it's the same identity of relationship to itself. Just like we have different color eyes, we have the same color eyes, same simultaneously. One of the things correlation values is what is simultaneously actually true. What is it? And if the smallest finite detail is left out, we know it's not nature's system. And nature's only increasing. And like every identity of volume, its identity is relative to positive and negative simultaneously. So a whole bunch of countries have roles with people associated with and as a Mike Pandolf, and people with the name Spada and Della Fera, who have roles with family members of probate courts, for example. And these are people involved with families at New Britain Superior Court and Hartford courts, involved with sick things with their patients and criminals before they were forced to be their patients and criminals, and with the doctors of those patients and criminals, forcing them to hide with their, in other words, they have those locations needing to hide live progressions from other locations. But these are people forging and switching names. There's a detective Samuda, and there's a former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, and our co-defendants of his. Thaddeus Grabowski is one of the ones on Fox Connecticut News, also with some Mendez police. And Eric Mendez, another one, switches his names. and they have who knows many people. I don't know where they live. They might live near Jonathan Maya. Jonathan, I never met a Marco, and Alex Mayano. He's and his John Mayano's roles with sequence shifts. He's roles with planting evidences and spreading rumors tied to that, where there's a possession over the intelligence communities of our nations, and where they which is also relative to where they have juxtaposed natures of wire crime acts and methods, and like with little kids, Weathersfield police have been switching names, and as their roles with our countries, they're hiding behind the other countries. They have roles with this, and like they have a daughter of a Afghan leader involved with Weathersfield Library and the Weathersfield town offices, and a school next to it who has roles with whiting forensics names, increasingly roles with names from other parts of towns that came on my street, and roles with predicate acts tied to the same house/S, involved with the wire crimes. People at CCSU, a whole bunch of names like a Jamie Caron and others. So in other words, they're making police forms juxtaposed with police and then pretending it's not their fault because there's other police forms juxtaposed with them, for example. And when they deal with the complaints of the people grouped too. And so they're evaluating, they're needing to offensively pretend the people are going to go crazy. So we need to pretend to be just to appearances of justice when we are not. So we have criminally foreign influence readings of the Constitution unabridged in America. Their readings of the statutes leaving out the breaching method and its roles with the Constitutional Convention, and leaving out how our founders had to counter-extort the other founders and its roles with the invention. They leave out the importance of these three inseparable volumes with correlation nature, invisible but still discernible / semi-invisible. So in other words, these are also rules with this name Cololo, with the latest call from the Weathersfield police. And there's a detective, or no, there's an Inspector Mike, and he didn't give a last name. So they play games with name switching at New Britain Superior Court and sequence shifting and falsify police reports into databases and of an array. So they can mess with it in the past. And they can so they can measure and maintain who's going to self-value roles with the interbranch locations as predicate acts delivery system methods. Way worse than any crimes that the people come up before them are using for, and not what they were supposed to have immunities of prosecution from. They're offensively, sickly, distinctly against leaders from ourselves. How they do this is keeping, for example, political parties. In other words, political parties a shell game. Locations, areas, and states, criminally foreign influence, positive treatments and negative treatments simultaneously as identity treatments increasingly. Better than perfectly, this breaching method assigned American history to be self-valued, only having been allowed to be discerned with dishonest people and natures pretending other. Otherwise, this would have been revealed. How they got away with it is how they assigned from off campuses roles with predicate acts with facts into databases, little sneaky identity theft, fraud, slander tricks. One thing this method is manifest as non-distinctly everywhere the species body is an identity theft, fraud, slander method. Forgiveness, for example, as a value spoken about by the counter insidiousness natures, but still insidiousness natures of modern religion that left their religions in the hands of people they knew had campuses already criminally foreign influenced. And we were supposed to address this. In other words, there's fake passions and emotions with the stewardship of each of the sciences. Boxing, martial arts, and wrestling is easier to discern where and how the sciences share an identity, and where and how they appear not to is in demonstration of the same thing, while simultaneously teaching about exception nature, and a special difference. Unity of people weak, while some could just, control that, will never, never be able to defend the order of the finite. Real justice, which has not been in our country since some ancient times. If it is a substance that is left to right value first, left to right being finite value. In other words, individual value, finite. There are three forms of the article. There are two. There's one definite article, the. So I could say the thing, and I could point to saying a single thing of a group of things. No. Or I could say a thing, or an apple. I could say words that begin with vowels. You put the an before it as an indefinite article. But these are two distinct identities of invisible but still discernible that go with the value of how and why. Another way it is invisible but still discernible goes with it. I was thinking about the participles, but with the articles, that's why and how they are. Finite is one of is the root of those two words. Indefinite articles, a and an, and the definite article, definite, finite, finite. Definite is spelled definite, but finite, the smallest. It means not just the smallest thing, not just the order of the finite, but what is too finite to mix with the order of the finite or the finite, but one way. And, that way to understand it and to communicate about it is the extent of its identity of volume as our subject or as our consciousness, its identity of relationship to itself and the value of that, or of anything we could make up. So I'm saying we make up a new industry here. The best play nature is showing us to do it in Ukraine, but to know automatically, simultaneously, to set up the sense and sensitivity, we're going to fix the species body at once. And Africa is not one country. And trying to make Africa one unity is a grouping tactical ulterior from how our syntax is being communicated to communicate by nature itself, by how it uses the word, how it needs to use grouping, group differences, and the species body difference. So it shows us it's not always positive. It shows us simultaneously it will only stay positive unto itself, while it is positive and negative at the same time, as an identity is. Whether it's whether you're having a good time, you're happy, or a negative state, the identity is relative to positive and negative simultaneously, as it is in the body. But it is also a quality of diffusion active. And it is also a quality of diffusion of the past. And there's an extent to calm that we could discern. And there's an extent beyond that we could discern. And still take from, because how has conjunction. We have to be able to use what is true always. So they have the science of self-value being and having been abridged. And everyone jumping into everyone else's conversations with other people. See, people in the news makes allegations against people every day. They're not supposed to make allegations. The courts make allegations against people every day. The courts are offensively preventing people the right to remain innocent until proven guilty because they still have collusions with all exceptions tied to them, including the insidiousness of the logic of people A through Z relative to what I caught them doing with a principal child abuser's campus. And there is an Asian family that recently had a home break and reported tied to them. These are people involved with former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, in a 2006 district court case in Connecticut, and both sides of that case and their sources and the courts, people like a Brian Silver is one involved with predicate acts with people on my street through time. I never saw him on my street in my life. I never had a conversation in my life. There are proofs that they took pictures of him near me so they could make fake exception of me pretending I know him because they have roles with the intelligence community feeding in what they can't be honest about how and why really details with that. So they feed in, the breach never went away. Roles with a former mayor Gold is also one of the ones involved with identity theft, fraud, slander. WFSB attached me to fake conversations with themselves and others. I don't know if it's China at a Chinese food restaurant. I feel bad. I should have been more direct, but I don't understand because this is people since the World Trade Center, after the World Trade Center attack, and years before it. Mike Pandoff made a demonstration to me, which was about years before at a corner of a building. Made him and the other people involved, like a spotted family, brought up that shopping center. I never saw them there. Never saw him there in the past. In other words, other people brought him up with that. John DeMoro was also involved with child abusers. I don't know if that as people that work with the intelligence community with that spot, and as people involved with Mike Levine, who's one of the people, a principal child abuser, confessed, recorded, demonstrated, confirmed. A police chief, Cintron, is also one of the ones with all these different countries. People with Korea, people with China, apparently, people with Japan, people at Central Connecticut State University, as people with Germany, military family. They have roles with psychiatry, with people with whole families that work at Hartford Hospital. Criminally foreign influence, timed roles with overt criminal enterprises and private ones, and not legitimately if that's undercover, especially if they're training them on off like Weathersfield Avenue or whatever. And I don't know what's his name? I forgot his name. A guy who looks just like Elvis Presley when he was a kid. He was older than me. I don't know how old he was. Nick Sweet. And nothing against him. I don't know him. One time I went to his house, or what they said was his house on Weathersfield Avenue. The person who brought me there is one of the ones recorded involved with the World Trade Center attack, predicate acts further. Proven after the World Trade Center attack from inside the Ninth Circuit. Post-dated documents had been timely stamped legal documents had been post-dated from inside the court insidiously to appear late to the panel of judges with the names at the locations next to it, like Spada and DeMoro, also involved, were recorded with the confessions time. And people on off Central Connecticut State University, roles with a whole bunch of different natures of predicate acts and methods of predicate acts. Increasingly with people tied to my area and street. So there's a Mike Domain, Adam Domain, also as one of the ones on our Fox Connecticut News, and with the extended family members of the judges and the prosecutors involved with the identity theft, fraud, slander method here and there, and where and how they get away with pretending passions, emotions, and speaking about economics while they're playing see no evil, hear no evil. Wire crime roles with and methods with the wire. People who answer the phone. Oh, I have to do that. They put me in fake conversations with a Roger Suzanne. So please have the Weathersfield police respond, because now they're getting more police with the other retired police chiefs and other police departments or families with the same house involved with the Dame Kalala with wire crimes with them and whiting forensics increasingly involved with predicate acts with them and people tied to them, and mayors retired and standing. In other words, there has not been one legitimate election. And when they say, "Oh, that's a theory," they're leaving out what's actually recorded. They're preventing people voices because they have all sides in criminal and civil cases. They have the victims and the victims' advocates, including Sandy Hook, further involved, used tactically delusions wrought too, involved, including further with the principal child abusers campus, further digital crimes, and more obscure pictures on Twitter since that, and before it and during, because they're measuring and maintaining roles with the various police forms juxtaposed with the FBI, state police, and Wethersfield police with other departments also, where and how that is employed. They have descriptions of who is friends with each other and stuff like that. There are proofs that they've been using calculus, tactically delusions wrought. Nature uses reason and uses difference in ways greater than and more finite than what can be measured, and it uses it as itself. And that's why we could use it to figure out the questions. Like, what are our leaders? What would they help us to understand? They say, don't leave out. George Washington said, don't leave out the extortion of himself and the torture and how and why they had to leave torture and slavery in trenches, because they were sickly, distinctly enslaved, fact-treatment nature, sickly while simultaneously tortured and extorted. So how they got away with everyone knowing this is how they self-valued roles with the sciences abridged. Where and how this preaching method knew that nature would increasingly demonstrate that to people who are honest. And it are increasingly already employed identities of in other words, why should we respect the title of a name? Or why should we, okay, that's why they disrespect too. So then they don't let the hyper invisible, the same, in other words. So the news media has been making allegations because they have roles. They have roles attaching me to my principal, and they put fake things, the way they do it with tricks, and they write records. Like, for example, about how and why. How real. I just said real fast, and then everyone jumped up and made a protest for the to protest the a beating of someone by police in California. California medical locations have roles with psychiatry and foreign and domestic, judges and prosecutors that are tactically delusions or criminally foreign influence, roles with the worst patients and criminals. The witness protection program is also involved here, roles with all sides of that, and roles with uses of corners, with unions, corruption, as the names involve timed uses of corners of streets and of schools, fake and faked for themselves. So if you try to speak about it, I never saw a Brian Bonin on a campus in my life, and the only time I saw him was him seeking me out 2 times. In other words, he's involved in wire crimes with his neighbors. A people, a whole bunch of people recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed they involved Sal Civiello, fake conversations with me. I don't know if Sal is involved with that himself. But in other words, and wire crime roles, and people that have conversations with their teachers, and people tied to mayors, like a former Mayor Gold, is one of the ones who non-verbally also recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved in identity theft, fraud, slander, predicate acts with databases, and uses of on-off parks and on-off campuses, planting evidences with Joe Aiello, involved him with child abusers further. As the roles, there's a Bob Chase with a whiting forensics, recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with UN corruption and pretending to be against it at the same time. They have a shell game. Don't forget, these courts have been predicate acts way worse than what they put people in prisons for. They need to pretend corrections. They have on-off the state corrections offices and Hartford, Wethersfield, involved with this name Cololo, and the Wethersfield police forging and switching names, and the confessions of this Bob Chase, And where I rose my voice for days, like 3 months after my father died, right before I did that, they're hiding what I caught them doing. And then they hid it by faking conversations with me. Because the second the police came, I didn't have any conversations with them. And there were no the doctors like this Leahy family, who has roles with some untimely deaths and has roles planting evidences on all sides of my house and on their side and on their sides of their house since I was a kid. They're locking people to hide what they use. Their on off town line, two rod highway and Hangdog Lane are a whole bunch of people involved with courts and the campuses I never had conversations with, and ones that sought me out to make fake exceptions, where how exceptions and exception nature and programming is being and having been used criminally for an influence. So they should fear God. They're going to bring up a topic of the defense or security in the suits and ties. Let me humble their minds. Please follow mandated law for WFSB because they're the ones also involved with impositions against our countries. And through our own, however, they have Elm Street and Rocky Hill involved with a whole bunch of foreign and domestic medical families and military involved with like Yukon people with a Violet family involved also with religious locations with psychopaths, including relative to where and how they've been these are people preventing people religious rights and lying about their motivations, faking conversations into databases. So please, we have to purge. They owe more money to our countries as these rackets rolls in our countries than we need. We're going to blast the environment worse with more weapons. When we could have a free military exercise and pantheism, a science led by nature itself. Because if the slightest finite detail is left out, or in other words, if something doesn't feel like evolution, real evolution science, we check to make sure what we reveal and is not criminal insidious natures or positive. So to understand this, but they employed the real causes of negative value nature, progressions, acts, and nature simultaneously, blamed on things other than themselves, and simultaneously, while employing the only remembered and known means to cause positive value nature, progressions, acts, and natures, more and more criminal insidiousness natures of them. The only way we can fix the world and to stop the negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures is not by killing off people, preventing people from having families when you have the psychopaths. Why do you think they have all their kids? They've been playing these social games, fake ties, fake natures of ties, then they make fake exceptions. Now, a whole bunch of people next to this Connecticut State Capitol fake with this. So please get Hartford Hospital on paper, one name and sequence, and have that Leahy family with the FBI director and the military people involved say sorry while they bow and fall. Bill Wall, please. Get them on paper. China, we're not going to go to war for these punks. Watch, watch, watch what I do to their logic. I'll show you boxing, martial arts, they share an identity and they fight but by the rules because there's one way and nothing is negative. That's why real evolution science, we sense even the findings. In other words, we have this method, we have this way. Anyway, and we're not going to, we're aware that it's a species body. So we're not just going to set up this design, okay, well, this will squelch and this will make peace for so many years. Those stupid agreements. We're going to have one that is where this is, and then we don't have to hide it too. So we're going to say, look, all this money is going to come in here. All this resource, all this care, and organized use of it. Also social media. I'll give it to you guys, maybe, our country. I'd rather do it that way because that's what pantheism is made for. We have to break through this theater / hyper theater as criminally foreign influence, not criminal hyper theater, because it's blocking the means to cause evolution's fruits and gifts and means from nowhere, including how we are fact treatment nature, where it is a special difference too. So they have this punk I'm just calling punks. But punks use his name, Einstein, and the theory of relativity. Oh, did you read the book? But they have no use of it because it's a theory. It's a theory of relativity and a theory of special relativity. Nature uses e-special, not special relativity to teach us, and it uses exceptions in exception nature in ways additional from any way we could be, and it does because as itself. It is the past. That's how we remember the past. In other words, how, if a bug comes into your house and you try to chase it, it becomes aware of you. In other words, even bugs have consciousness. The animals, but too long, America in every modern country only remembers what the people before their parents, founders were even born only remember, tactically denatured. There are proofs that they took all these seeds. They wouldn't have come about from the way the ground in its identity of relationship to itself is now. The waters, they could only be, here we're going to hand out these seeds. The earth had an identity of relationship to itself that showed everyone. So the ancients couldn't believe that we'd forget how to cause positive, and that anyone could forget how to cause positive value nature progressions, acts of nature, how nature answers our questions. Let alone could they fathom how someone could force, trick, hurt, and persuade the entire species volume to forget. They force, trick, hurt, persuade them to counter things like criminal foreign influence is wrong. Even if it was in a country, maybe it was maybe it was a criminal enterprise. They had to other kind of military exercises. They're taxing, they cost, and all that. These, when we try to explain it, and we get movies out of it, so the people help, and that resource stays transparent, and we in the markets we prepare to lock down, so there's no we get better and better, and we get led by. Will lead us. So when you have to agree, in other words, and I'll donate it through ourselves and hold part of it up for you guys when you negotiate, because then you can negotiate and have disagreements of a better nature, because you don't have to worry about all that in Africa and things like that, because we're aware of that, and we're showing everyone, because every modern nation was built tactically to nature to cause negative value nature progression, acts of nature, reliant upon things from other locations. We're in a semi-ancient trap. Is nature needs us not to blame other things, others, ourselves, where the breaching method is important. Not to be equal, because then we're defending qualities of fact-treating nature, aspects of fact-treating nature, and fact-treating nature as criminal insidiousness, but defined by nature, its identity of relationship to itself, and the only increasing value of that, which demonstrates even if a country legalizes or entertains things like slavery or witch trials, or torture, nature itself is going to demonstrate with negative value nature progressions, action natures to keep everyone from understanding and communicating the value of that. Again, it didn't just employ everything blamed on other things other than ourselves, and the only means more and more to cause positive value nature progressions, action natures, if it's going to be self-valued uses of criminal insidiousness natures, all that. It also exploited that in ways no one fathomed, where and how we are manifest as syntax nature. And so the period is the point of real possession, of the discernment of the invisible but still discernible, of its identity of relationship to itself, and of the value of that. The comma is the shadow of possession, of the discernment of the invisible but still discernible, of its identity of relationship to itself, and the value of that. So a comma comes. It could come after independent clause, or but it's not going to connect two independent clauses. It's a shadow of possession. So it's gonna be a comma word or a comma. It's going to be a phrase, a word or a phrase after a comma. A semicolon. There are proofs that it was originally referred to as a semi-victory because there's semi-discernment of a independent clause. I mean, there's of a visible but still discernible, as invisible but still discernible. The ancients were led by the invisible but still discernible / hyper invisible but still discernible, and by how nature communicates by showing everything about difference is about to for the discernment of its difference, which is being hyper invisible but still discernible. So that's what we're looking for. Then ancients, there is function. So in other words, we've been used when they use our names, America, and when there's a shell game where China's name is not Chinese people's body. These are systems that are tactically ulterior than the hypernative one. America still. We need to fight the honest way, not just honest, hyper honest. You know, I heard honest, but criminal and seditious natures of it. They've been torturing Americans since before the World Trade Center attack. They use that effectively to make Americans to pretend Americans self-value roles with torture. These are people involved with Hartford Hospital, involved with this, with the World Trade Center attack, and with the counters involved with predicate acts with them. They should fear God that they pretend they could speak for law or anything. Please follow mandated law for them. I'll show you how to heal our country. Have CCSU get this Detective Samuto onto paper and clarify himself. He's got roles of more child abuse. A whole bunch of people demonstrated him involved with it, and with the FBI and other police forms involved. A whole bunch of people with the name Scalora and Jamie Caron involved with predicate acts with databases at the campuses I went to. I didn't even go to the campus who was with somebody Scalora. I never saw him around a campus. And the Claudia Scalora, I never saw him around a campus ever once. Saw off campus, and we never had communications. I mean, verbal. In other words, people make confessions through others, but then she reportedly demonstrably has roles with DeMoro families and people on Valley Crest involved, and Morgan Circle with the names with our countries. Where you guys are sharing things where you're supposed to hide secrets, but you're not hiding the secrets. With this, because the family members of the judges involved, timed roles with overt criminal enterprises and private ones. Increasingly, every year I go, every year, intercities planting things too to complicate. We're tied to their wire crime acts and methods with Wethersfield police. One guy's name says he's next to Trinity College. He says his name is Darth Vader. He's also one of a whole bunch of people tied to the ones on my street involved with the name Cololo. People at Trinity College recorded when they were kids their roles timed with the people with the unions and stuff like that. Regardless whose police forms are what, it's regardless. Get them on paper, please. They switch names, forge names. A Judge Killian and a Judge Smith spoke things in years apart, faked in the databases, with roles with all sides in criminal and civil cases, victims and victims advocates. These are also people with Sandy Hook further involved with the principal child abusers campus, also with the foreign and domestic military. I'll show you how to clear their minds and how to make better than to make hyper peace and evolution's fruits and gifts and means out of nowhere. But we have to have mandated law followed. Please have WFSB fix the fake conversations with me and say sorry in the news and take down all the other stuff because they have it obfuscated like that. In other words, and they've been slandering me in the background with the intelligence community so they can keep their intelligence criminally collusions at crime scenes and pretending other. Predicate acts with facts is an important thing to understand how that breaching method employed black and white to mean other than they do. In other words, nature communicates this way. Come on, get them on paper, please. I'll show you how sick they are with these mental health people in the psychiatry. I'm not a doctor. I'm going to delineate their delusions from their criminally foreign influence, fact-cheating nature, and get them. So these are military families involved with the neighbors of a DeMoro family too on Valley Crest and Weathersfield, as ones involved with the World Trade Center attack and our names of our countries. Fear God for them. If they hide and plot, make sure they no, in other words, people, make sure I get a response. Any state, especially New Yorkers. These are people from Connecticut involved with abuses of New York kids, from half partially on the campus that's partially off of it, and worse. So let's all rehearse. Wire crime methods, broadcasted evidences, using stories to plant evidences insidiously. You'll see. Watch. Follow mandated law for your government. You know that it was never followed since founding. Search your soul. Don't leave the fakes who respond first to control everything. Hey, people. Everyone, watch too. Judge Napolitano's Judging Freedom. Judges, all natures of logic, all natures of industries, people were backed into self-value roles with uses of predicate acts with facts. For example, the grades up till third grade, distinctly from the grades third to sixth, etc. And this is multi-front against each age of correlation nature. I'll tell no lies. And not because I'm a truth teller or whatever like that. You guys brought this up. This is an identity theft, fraud, slander method. Let's get that fixed. Because they should not keep speaking about our names and quoting that their service because they're involved with murder of Americans under the guise of fake integrity. That's why they value the worst psychopath losers they have as bad leaders. In other words, we shouldn't have gone to war. You should have followed mandated law. And don't fear the FBI director. This isn't his capacity as a defendant and with his co-defendants involved with timed roles on campuses with predicate acts with a whole bunch of different countries, unions at the same time per criminally foreign influence readings of statutes, originally and still, tactically delusions raw. They're fucking excuse my language. In other words, we're going to examine what witch trials were about, which is about slavery, even if it was made up. We're going to examine how they've been telling other things, others themselves, blamed for where the breaching method was supposed to be blamed, leaving out how the databases, they never stopped being used criminally foreign influence.